We've already worked with midpoints, but now we're going to look at plotting points on the coordinate plane and finding midpoints of segments that are graphed. So let's start with an opener. Let's plot the point A, which is 5, -4, and B, which is -7, 1. And then I want you to connect A and B to make the segment AB. And then I want you to find the midpoint of AB. And I want to find, actually I want the coordinates. So your answer is going to be a coordinate with parentheses, a number, comma, another number, parentheses. So I would suggest maybe hit pause, try and do this, and then check your answer. And I'll walk through it. Okay, so first of all, just to make sure that we remember graphing, whenever we graph points, they're in the form x, comma, y. So the first number represents which direction you go in the x direction, left or right. This is your x-axis. This is 1, 2, 3, etc. Negative numbers go this way, -1, -2, -3. The second number is your y number, and this is the y-axis, it's vertical. Positive numbers are up, negative numbers are down. And so 0, 0 would be right at the center, which we call the origin. Let's put a point there right now. That's 0, 0. All right, so if we want to plot the point A, it's at 5, -4. So first we go 5 in the x direction. So that would be to the right, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And then we go -4 in the y direction, so that's down 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's point A. And then for point B, start at the center, and it has coordinates -7, 1. So we go -7 in the x direction, so that's 7 to the left, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then +1 in the y direction is up. And there's point B. So now let's go ahead and make a segment connecting those. And B straight over to A, there. Now we want the midpoint of this. So actually, let me erase this so it's not so crowded. Okay, so there's a couple ways to think about this. If I was traveling from A to B and I only traveled on the lines, how would I get there? Well, there's two ways to get there. You could go up and then over to the left, or you could have first gone to the left and then go up. But in either case, when you count how far we went 5 up, that's in the y direction, and we went 12, actually -12 to the left. But if we had done it the other way, it still would have been -12 and 5. So it doesn't really matter which way you think of it. I'll use, I don't know, let's go with the green instead of the red. Doesn't really matter though. All right, so now if I'm traveling and I'm starting at point A and I want to get to point B, but I get tired, so I'm only going to do half the trip. So to go halfway, instead of going 12 to the left, I'm going to go half of that. What's half of that? That's 6 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then instead of going 5 up, I'm only going to go half that. Half of 5 is 2.5 or 2.5. 1, 2.5. And there I am. There's my midpoint. So I did half of this and then half of that to get to the middle. What if, on the other hand, I had started at B and I went over to A? Well, as you can see, as you can see, I'm still going to go the same amount in each direction. That's still 12 over, and then it would be 5 down. And half of that would be 6, and then 2.5. So it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of different ways you can think about this, but you're always going to wind up with the same answer if you count correctly. So it's half the distance from A to B, or half the distance from B to A. Now, we're supposed to write our answer in terms of a point or coordinates. So from 0, 0, we actually went, that's a -1, and then a -1.5. So the coordinates of your midpoint are -1, comma, -1.5. If you want to write it as a fraction, that's fine. But there you go. Let's call this midpoint M. And there's your coordinates. All right, but that's not the only way to do it. I mean, it's a lot of work, but if you have a graph, it's pretty easy to do. So let's look at another example. Find the midpoint of GH. Now notice, I didn't even give you the coordinates of G and H. We could figure them out pretty easily, but let's do this entirely just by traveling from G to H. This is one of the ways we could go. So how many is that? We went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to the right. And then we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up. So if I want to find the midpoint, put a big dot here, I'm going to go half of each of those distances. So I'm only going to go 4 to the right, and then only 3 up. And that would be half of the distance. So instead of traveling the entire 8 and then 6, I'm going to go half of each. Half of 8 is 4, and half of 6 is 3. If I had started at H, it would be the same thing. I could go, half of 6 would be down 3, and then half of 8 would be over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still at the same spot. If I had gone up at the top, I could have gone 4 over, and then 3 down. So you see, it doesn't matter. From G, I could have gone 3 up and 4 over. The important thing to remember is that we're going half of this and half of that. And that takes us there. Now, what's the coordinates of that point? So from 0, 0. So now you have to forget about the 8, the 6, the 4, and the 3. Now just start from 0, 0. Let's get to this point. It's in the x direction, -1, -2, -3. And in the y direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that was -3, 5. And so there's the midpoint. All right, so, I mentioned there is another way to do this instead of looking at visually, and there's a midpoint formula. But in order to use the midpoint formula, we're going to have to use the coordinates of the points. So, let me give you the general formula, and then we'll go back and apply it. So, to find the midpoint between 2 points, and let's call those points, let's give those points coordinates. X sub 1, comma, y sub 1. And the second point we'll call x sub 2, comma, y sub 2. And so here's the formula. To get the midpoint, what you're going to do, remember now, your answer is a point. So it's going to look like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first look at the two x numbers, and we're going to average them. So we're going to do x sub 1 plus x sub 2. And then how do you average something? Add them up, divide by 2. And then we're going to average the y numbers. And so we're going to do y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. And that's the midpoint formula. So you're actually going to have numbers for x sub 1, y sub 1, and you'll have numbers for x sub 2, y sub 2, and then you'll plug those numbers in to these spots, and then you'll calculate it, and you'll be done. So let's try and do that with this first problem. Let's write the coordinates of point H. So here's 0, 0. So H was 1 in the x direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, comma 8 are the coordinates for H. And then for G, in the x direction we go -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, and then +2 in the y direction. So -7, +2. -7, 2. Okay, so those are my points. So let me write them over here. H is 1, comma 8, and G is -7, comma 2. So to find the midpoint, we average the x numbers. So let me circle those. Alright, so for the midpoint we're going to get 1 plus negative 7 divided by 2. That'll be the x-coordinate of my answer. And then we're going to average the y numbers. And so 8 plus 2 divided by 2. And so now when I figure this out, 1 plus negative 7 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And then 8 plus 2 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And if you look, let's draw an arrow. So we got negative 3 comma 5, and that's the exact same thing we got when we did it with the graph. So two different ways to calculate it. One, counting over and up or down and over, and then doing half of those distances to get to the middle. And the other way is using the coordinates, and then the distance, or the midpoint formula, we average the x coordinates, add them up, divide by 2, and then we average the y coordinates, add them up, divide by 2. So you decide which way is better. If they give you a picture like this problem did, I think I would just count. I wouldn't bother doing the coordinate work because it takes more time. But if they just give you the coordinates like the opener, then I would go ahead and probably use the distance formula. So let me just do that really quickly for this one. So if I were calculating, I'm going to say 5 plus negative 7 divided by 2, and then I'm going to do negative 4 plus 1 divided by 2. And that's going to give me 5 plus negative 7 is negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. And then negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3 divided by 2 is negative 1.5. And sure enough, that's what we had come up with before. All right, let's try, so we did our midpoint formula. Let's try it here. Given these 2 points, find the midpoint. All right, your choice. If you have some graph paper, you can use graph paper and plot this. Otherwise, use the midpoint formula. You might want to hit pause, try it, and then check your answer. Okay, here we go. So first, I'm going to add the two x numbers and divide by 2. So what are my x numbers? 7 plus 1. So 7 plus 1 divided by 2. That'll give me my x coordinate. Then I'm going to add the two y coordinates and divide by 2. What are my y coordinates? Negative 4 and 5. So negative 4 plus 5 divided by 2. So 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. 1 divided by 2 is a half. You could leave it as 1 over 2 if you like. Or if you don't like that and you want decimals, 1/2 is 0.5. So either way you want to do it, since I've been doing decimals, let's leave 1 as a fraction. There you go. All right, let's try one last example. What if I gave you one of the endpoints, and instead of giving you the other endpoint, I actually gave you the midpoint? How would you find the other endpoint of your segment? Well, once again, there's two ways to do this. We could use the formula. And so I could say, okay, C is negative 2, 3. And then D, I don't know what D is, so I'm just going to call it xy. I could call it x sub 2, y sub 2 if I like. But since I don't have an x sub 1, y sub 1, I'll just call it x and y. Less writing. There we go. All right, now I know when I calculate the midpoint, the answer is 2, 6. So when I do negative 2 plus x divided by 2 and 3 plus y divided by 2, I should get 2 comma 6. So I can come up with two equations for this. I can take the x part, negative 2 plus x divided by 2, and set that equal to 2. And then I could do the other part, 3 plus y divided by 2, and I would set that equal to 6, right there. And now I have to solve these equations. So I would do the opposite of divide by 2, so I would multiply both sides by 2, so those would cancel. And I get negative 2 plus x equals 4. And then I would add 2 to both sides, and I got x is 6. Same idea here, multiply both sides by 2 to cancel the fraction, and I would get 12 on the other side, and then I would subtract 3, and I get 9. So the point, what I just came up with was the point D, right here. So D has coordinates 6, 9. All right, so that's one way to do it. Let's do it using the graph. I think you're going to find this easier. C was at negative 2, 3. That's right here. And then M is at 2, 6. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. All right, so there's M. All right, to go from C to M, I've only traveled half the distance. So I know that D is somewhere over there. So let's count. To go from C to M, how many did I have to go over and how many up? 1, 2, 3. I had to go 4 over, 1, 2, and I had to go 3 up. So if that's only half the distance, half the journey, I'm going to have to travel 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4 more, and then 3 more up. And that should take me to my final spot. And so there is where D is going to be. So I went 4 more and 3. Now, what are the coordinates of that point? Well, let's just count from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So D has coordinates 6, 9. And that's exactly what we got when we did it algebraically. Now you decide which way's better. Well, I think if you have a graph, this is a lot better, a lot easier to do. And some people might even be able to just look at the numbers. I'll give you kind of a third quick way here. You're looking at these numbers and these numbers. So first look at your x's. From negative 2 to positive 2, I would have had to add 4 there. So that means I need to add 4 more to get to D. So 2 plus 4 more would take me to 6. And then for the 3, to get from 3 to 6, I had to add 3. And so I'm going to add 3 more. And 6 plus 3 is 9. And I would have gotten my answer that way. So a lot of different ways to think about it. I'm giving you many different ways because I'm not saying one way is better than the other. It just depends on what works for you, what makes the most sense for you, and then do it that way. Okay, your assignment then is to work on worksheet 15.